Welcome everyone to Podcast 69 South, where we cuss and discuss true crime, cold cases, current events, and hot topics, along with our state of society today. This is your trigger warning. Our podcast content is produced for adult listeners 18 years of age and older. We discuss situations that may be offensive and triggering for some listeners. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome back to 69 South, everybody. I'm Chop, your host, and with me always is my beautiful co-host, Julie. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so excited. We have a new case, and it's not really about kids, so that makes me excited.
Amen.
It's a good one, too, today.
Remember, you can find us on all podcast platforms, so whether you're tuning in on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else, we're just thrilled to have you.
That's right. And if you love what we do, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/69South. And we would like to welcome and thank our new Patreon members this week. We have Eric, Luther, Alicia, Casey, Jake, Vicky, Lee, Rachel, Gina, Melody, Trent, Amy, Ashley, and Dave. And then there is Just a Mom and Christopher. So thank you guys so much for your support. And if you'd like to be a Patreon member for just our $5 tier, you'll get access to all of our legal documents for the cases we cover, like today's affidavit, plus one bonus episode a week, sneak peeks, and behind-the-scenes clip. We also got big plans as we grow, so stay tuned for more. Also, check out our website at 69southpodcast.com and sign up for our monthly newsletter that's in the works.
And if you want some 69 South swag, grab our Cussin' and Discussin' t-shirt at Centerton Gas Station on Robb Hill and State Road 67 or at shopscentedjewels.com.
We're working on a one-stop shop for all our merch, so bear with us, and thank you for following our journey.
Today, we are dedicating this episode to one of our beloved followers, Lori Wirt, who sadly passed away this week. She fought a long, hard cancer battle, but always remained so positive in life. This one's for you, Lori. We're going to miss you.
We have news of an arrest in a cold case. This is coming out of Hamilton County. This is a crime that occurred more than 30 years ago.
And just the last hour, Indiana State Police announced they'd arrested a man accused of murdering Tony Bledsoe back in 1992.
And to everybody, I'm telling you, we promise we have episodes and stuff we're working on out of the state of Indiana, but literally every week that we try to have plans of doing something out of the Hoosier state, something else just freaking blows up.
Off.
This story begins with an affidavit filed by law enforcement officer Terry Josh Watson of the Indiana State Police. He's filing this affidavit in support of a murder charge against Thomas L. Anderson, Jr., described as a white male, born in 1971, 5'11", 214 pounds, with red hair and blue eyes.
Now, this all started on April 3rd, 1992, when state police were called to a dump site at County Road 900 West, just north of US 40 in Putnam County. Human remains were located, specifically a body without a head, hands, or feet. This became Indiana State Police Case 53-9414.
Just a torso. That's some gruesome shit. Fast forward to March 14th, 2018, Lieutenant Terry Josh Watson was contacted by Sergeant Bill Clifford of the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department. Sergeant Clifford asked Watson to pull an old Indiana State Police missing persons case from the 1990s, believing it might be a murder case due to a tip he received from Scotty Anderson.
Now, Watson located the cold case file. This case stated that Tony Bledsoe, with the date of birth of August 29th, 1967, was reported missing on March 16th, 1992 by his wife Paula. Now, Tony and Paula lived at 309 Crabtree Court, Apartment 3 in Arcadia, Indiana, though Crabtree Court has since been renamed to Sunset Court.
On March 16th, 1992, Tony had left his home in his classic gray 1971 Oldsmobile Cutlass. with the personalized Indiana license plate TJSTOY. Neither Tony nor the car was ever seen again. Man, that's a long time for a wife to be missing her husband.
Now, the investigation picked up significantly on September 4th of 2019. Around 9 a.m., Chief Urick of the Arcadia Police Department and Lieutenant Watson met with Scotty Anderson at the Arcadia Police Department. Now, Scotty refused a recorded statement, but the affidavit summarizes what they told officers.
Scotty stated that Andy Emmert had killed Tony Bledsoe, and Tommy, referring to Tommy L. Anderson Jr., had witnessed the entire killing. They also said that the whole incident was over Tony hassling Andy about a stolen car. The individual stated that Tommy brought Tony over to Andy's house, and Andy shot Tony in the head with a shotgun.
I think it was stolen car parts.
It was supposedly a radio. We'll get into that, though.
Yeah. So what's even more disturbing is that Scotty told them that Andy and Tommy cut up Tony's body and dumped it off bridges all over the state of Indiana. They cut off the head, hands, and feet and put them in a bucket full of concrete.
That's hardcore. That's like some mafia shit.
Now, this is his nephew telling, right?
Exactly. We were kind of wondering, so we dug a little bit. Why in the hell would a nephew be telling on his uncle? And we found some shit, and this is just speculation, but Scotty has some charges that kind of coincide with a lot of the dates that's going on in this case. So we don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. But
And let me tell you, folks, these charges are not good charges. I'm talking about some Class B felonies that are neglect of a dependent for a person under 14. There's another one for neglect of a dependent with serious bodily injury. And those are just the two main bad ones.
Yeah, there's quite a few battery charges and domestic batteries on him.
So much so that he was facing 23 years, and I think he ended up he got 4 initial years in prison. He did 2 and then got out on work release and then got in some trouble and I believe went back and then messed up and had to do, his back time or something like that. And then they put him back in there for like 4 years.
Yeah, I believe that was the case. Scotty just couldn't keep his hands to himself, it looked like, and couldn't keep whatever out of his system because he kept violating, and it's a never-ending thing. You guys can look it up on my case, just like we did.
So he had done 10 years, he had done a lot of time, and then he got in trouble again on another pretty serious battery case, and then that's when the information and the tip came in.
We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, it's Chop here at 69 South. We have gathered quite the following of new and faithful listeners. In fact, we're in 72 countries and 1,600 cities. It excites the shit out of us, to be honest. We have countless downloads and streams. If you're a small business starting out or an accomplished business looking for some good advertisement, shoot us an email at 69southpodcast@gmail.com. The 6 and the 9 are numbers, southpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Have a good day. We will send you a advertisement package. Just goes to show you folks that you never want to be telling anybody anything. A fish that doesn't open its mouth doesn't get caught, if you know what I mean. So later on that day, on September 4th, 2019, around 11 a.m., Chief Ulrich and Lieutenant Watson went to an address in Atlanta, Indiana, where Tommy Anderson lives with his mother. They were met by Tommy's mom, and then when they asked to speak with Tommy, he came to the door.
The officers asked Tommy if he would accompany them to the Arcadia Police Department to speak with them. Tommy agreed to come and agreed to a recorded interview. The affidavit states that Tommy was interviewed 3 separate times as the investigation progressed.
Do you think at this time he knew his nephew was in jail and maybe his nephew had been calling saying, "Hey, Unc, you going to bond me out, bro? I can't, I can't
I
be
bet
sitting
you all
here
those
doing this
times he
shit.
bonded him out when he got in trouble before. I bet you. I'm just speculating here.
Right, we're speculating
because
on that.
if he knew that information and he's in jail all these times and he's like, uncle, I'm in jail here. Can you help me out?
Help me out, man. Oh, man, I'll do anything to get out of this shit, if you know what I mean, Unc. You know what I mean?
bet you they were like that.
So I wonder if Tommy knew when they came and was like, hey, we need to talk to your ass down at the station.
Oh, his heart dropped.
Now let's summarize those 3 interviews according to the affidavit. Tommy Anderson and Andy Emmert attended the elementary school together and became friends. In the early 1990s, they even lived together in a duplex on Cicero Road in Noblesville, Indiana.
Anderson stated that in 1990, Emmert's friend Dennis Cicchini had a Pontiac Firebird he was struggling to make payments on. Emmert and Cicchini arranged for Emmert and Anderson to go to Racine, Wisconsin, where Cicchini lived, and steal the Firebird so Cicchini could use the insurance to pay it off and get out from underneath the loan payment.
Anderson stated that he and Emmert did, in fact, carry out this plan to steal the Firebird. They stole the car and brought it back to Atlanta, Indiana. Anderson and Emmert stripped the aftermarket stereo from the Firebird, then abandoned the car and burned it in Boone County, Indiana.
Anderson stated that Emmert traded the stolen stereo equipment to Tony Bledsoe for auto parts. Later, Anderson informed Bledsoe that he got ripped off in the deal because the stereo was stolen. This angered Bledsoe, who demanded Emmert give him his auto parts back and threatened to go to the police. An ongoing grudge ensued between Emmert and Bledsoe. Emmert told Anderson this was never going to end. Bledsoe would harass him forever about it. So what Anderson did is he got pissed off at Emmert and went to Bledsoe and was like, hey, those parts were really stolen. That's what he did. He's like stirring the fucking pot for some reason.
Also, he was definitely playing both sides of the fence. I mean, the dude, Anderson, went with Emmert to steal the freaking Firebird.
Yeah.
And then went and told Bledsoe, hey, dude sold you a stolen car stereo. I wonder if he said, but I was the one that helped him steal it. That's weird. That's kind of a gray area. He was playing both sides of the fence, like you
definitely.
said. He must have been pissed off at Emmert at the time. And
For something.
For something. After the falling out between Anderson and Emmert, Anderson moved out of the duplex and in with his girlfriend at the time in a house on Main Street in Arcadia, Indiana. Anderson learned from his sister that Bledsoe was also living in Arcadia, a couple of blocks from where Anderson was living.
Now, Anderson, knowing approximately where Tony Bledsoe lived, walked towards the area of Bledsoe's house at 309 Crabtree Court. Now, Anderson identified which house was Bledsoe's by locating his classic Cutlass parked outside of his house.
Anderson approached Bledsoe at his home and told him he could get his auto parts back and finally put this situation to rest. Anderson informed Bledsoe that Emmert works nights and then goes to his girlfriend's house after work, so Emmert would not be there. So now he's setting up his buddy to get basically robbed.
Yeah. So Anderson stated that they carried out the plan. Anderson and Bledsoe went to Emmert's house on State Road 19 south of the Greencastle in Noblesville, Indiana. Anderson rode with Bledsoe and Bledsoe's Cutlass to Emmert's house in Noblesville and parked right out front of the duplex.
It goes on to state that Anderson and Bledsoe entered through the back door, which opens to a kitchen. Anderson walked in first, with Bledsoe following him. Anderson stated he heard a loud bang and looked over his shoulder to see Bledsoe shot in the head.
Now, Anderson said Bledsoe then fell backwards into the wall and forwards onto the kitchen floor. Anderson stated that Bledsoe was still breathing and gargling. Anderson said Emmert was standing in the doorway between Emmert's bedroom and the kitchen holding a rifle. Anderson saw Emmert stab Bledsoe several times with a fixed blade knife. Anderson struck Bledsoe in the head with a ball bat.
That's another interesting thing that I was thinking about there. if Anderson was the first one through the door and dude was already standing there with a shotgun and he shot Bledsoe, I mean,
Set up.
it was a freaking setup, 100%. Dude was playing hardcore, both teams there.
Or was that their plan to be like, oh, well, go tell him, hey, I'm not going to be here. And when you bring him over, he's just going to think it's you guys and we're getting this shit while he's not home.
They must have talked about it first. Wasn't no cell phones back then and say, hey, bro, I'm coming in first. You blast
No,
him.
it was planned. If he is standing there with a shotgun and the first person walks in and you don't shoot them and they're robbing your house, you shoot the next one behind him.
Yeah, had to be 100% planned, if the story that he's telling is facts. Anderson elaborated on the knife, describing it as a Boy Scout knife with a shiny fixed blade, and now had rust on it, a leather handle, and a metal pommel. A knife matching that description was located at Emmert's residence when a search warrant was done on October 2nd, 2024, in Emmert's safe.
Now, Anderson stated he and Emmert burned the bat that he had hit Bledsoe with.
Anderson stated he and Emmert moved Bledsoe's body down the hall and onto a bathtub. Emmert told Anderson they needed to make the body unidentifiable. Emmert cut Bledsoe's head, hands, and feet. Then Emmert and Anderson placed the head, hands, and feet in the pickle bucket of concrete. And for people that don't know really what a pickle bucket is, the way I understand it was, because my grandfather used to tell me this, we used to do work and shit together. That's what people called a 5-gallon bucket, because like White Castle specifically would get their sliced pickles and shit in 5-gallon buckets. So you could go to the back of a White Castle, or I assume maybe a lot of fast food joints or restaurants, but everybody back then just called them pickle buckets, the 5-gallon buckets.
That's neat. Now, they wrapped Bledsoe's body in cord and spray painted the body black to make it more concealable. They spray painted Bledsoe's body outside in the backyard of the duplex in Noblesville, leaned up against a shed in the backyard. You know this had to be done at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
I don't know. That's the first time I've ever heard of somebody spray painting a torso to like conceal it. Weird. Anderson and Emmert wrapped Bledsoe's body in a tarp and put Bledsoe's body in the trunk of Anderson's girlfriend's car. Emmert drove and Anderson was the passenger seat. Anderson recalls that Emmert drove them for a long time, heading west to a place with a green in the name or something like that.
Anderson and Emmert knew the area because they had bought a used car for parts from that area. Anderson indicated there was a large ravine where people had thrown out trash for years. They dumped the body in the ravine, covered it with a piece of wood to further conceal the body. They burned the tarp Bledsoe was wrapped and transported in when they returned home. It's worth noting the body dump site is approximately 10 miles from the city of Greencastle, Indiana, and along the main route of US 40.
I bet a lot of people were familiar with that dump site, if it was a big dump site out there. That was kind of more country than
especially
it is now.
Back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. Take it down to the dump. The affidavit also includes a summary of an interview on June 20th with Tommy Anderson, Lieutenant Heron, and the affiant. Tommy stated, and we quote, "We get right in the back door and I hear this bang, and then it threw him against the back door and he fell to the floor. So I'm, and then Andy comes because his bedroom was right there, off the kitchen, and, then I'm sure there was the, what's he doing here? So, I thought you weren't going to be here, so I just was going to give him the shit back and be done." So then he pulled away from the door and shut the door, and he went and got his knife, and I told you about the Boy Scout knife, and he started stabbing him in the back, and we talked about this, and you asked me how many times, and I think we agreed, maybe 6 to 10 times, but it seemed like 100 times. It was just bam, 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 when it's a shock type situation like that, things can seem a little distorted. But, that was my guess. Maybe 6 to 10 times he stabbed him.
Now, he continued, and this is
Verbatim, his
Tommy
interview.
This is Tommy explaining in his own words.
You could tell he's nervous and tripping.
So he continued, and so Tony lays there choking for a few minutes, and I didn't really know what to say, So he choked just for only a few minutes, and then he just stopped. So Andy went and got his black baseball bat, and he wanted me to hit him in the head, and I really didn't want to. But it was like, he kept, you need to do this. Do it. So I just lifted it up and, dropped it.
You think he just lifted the baseball bat up and dropped it on dude's head? Or you think he's underemphasizing on that shit right there?
He's completely underemphasizing. And, well, that wasn't good enough, so he made me do it just a little harder. And he wasn't moving or making any noise or anything. By that time, I thought he was already dead. So I thought, why make me do this? And I think he just did it because then he wasn't the only one that did something,
I can see through some shit right there because he was saying, I thought he was already dead. So before this point where he had, quote unquote, hit him with the baseball bat, dude had supposedly, allegedly shot him and stabbed him. So potentially this could get Anderson out of an actual murder charge.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't know if I don't believe everything Anderson's telling because, he's the one that went around running his mouth all those years, bragging about doing this to this person and made up these stories. What if it was just him that did it?
You never know, really. But obviously he was bragging about it all these years and talking the shit, and we'll get to a little bit more of that here in a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
But Anderson also stated, and we're back to the verbatim interview, so Andy always had a trash barrel out back, and he always had a fire going, so the bat went into the fire. Took off Tony's, I can't remember if we carried him into the bathtub first or if he cut off his clothes right there in the kitchen. I think he might have done it right there in the kitchen, but then the clothes went into the fire barrel, and then he's in the tub. Andy looked in his wallet, and I think there was 2 tins in the wallet, so we left him in the bathtub and went to Walmart. We got some black spray paint and a tarp, and then we came back, and Andy did the butcher work, if you will. And there was a window on the wall behind the toilet, and then I was standing over by the toilet feeling like I was going to throw up.
I bet you were.
I guarantee it. I opened up the window trying to get some fresh air, and I can't remember if he just had a bag of concrete or we got that too. But what he did was mix up some concrete and then the parts, and we put them the bucket, and then we took him from the bathtub.
Sorry, that's all. Those were his words verbatim, and it's
Exactly.
kind of hard to get through.
Kind of jump it up. You can tell dude was tripping.
Well, he continued. Andy had built like a shed out in the backyard, and we put him beside the shed and spray painted him black for camouflage. And we covered him up, and then, because I think that had happened was we had to come and we had to go get a car and then go to Walmart, and then he took me back to get my girlfriend's car. And then he opened up the trunk and we put the tarp in it where it was hanging out all sides. And we basically just put him in there and wrapped him up like a burrito. And then because I had clothes over there from working on the car so that I could take a shower, and that was to get everything off my clothes, he made me strip them all off and then burn them. And then we got him in the car and we headed towards where we got that blue 1970 car and did the body dump.
On September 4th, 2019, Lieutenant Watson spoke to the Racine, Wisconsin Police Department regarding the Pontiac Firebird that was quote-unquote stolen from Dennis Ticini. They located an incident report, number 90-95795, which states that on December 22nd, 1990, between 10:30 a.m. and 2:15 p.m., a light blue-silver 1988 Pontiac Firebird belonging to Dennis Cicchini was stolen from 5700 Durand Avenue in Racine, Wisconsin, specifically the Regency Mall parking lot where Cicchini worked. A note in the police report states that a vehicle contained approximately $3,000 of stereo equipment when it was stolen.
Boy, set that up good, didn't he, for when he was at work?
Oh, by the way, my car had a $3,000 stereo system. That's a lot of money for a stereo system.
In 1990?
I bet he had 412s in the trunk. I don't know.
Lieutenant Watson also spoke with Lieutenant Jeff Heron with ISP regarding a case he recalled from years ago where they recovered a torso. Lieutenant Heron told him it was a body dump where the body was thrown into an illegal trash dump in Putnam County near the town of Greencastle. He recalled the body being tied up with several stab wounds in the back.
You know, Greencastle was, like we were saying earlier, it was like a lot of country. I mean, it's still a lot of country. Greencastle's a big town, but you get on Highway 40, man, there's a big chunk of, quote unquote, the Greencastle area. Too. Yeah, it's country. So I bet finding the body dump torso in this dump site was probably a pretty big deal for this detective, and it probably haunted him for years.
Absolutely. They don't experience a lot of crime like that.
Mm-mm.
We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, this is Chop from 69 South, man. While we're taking a little break, get up, get yourself something to drink, grab yourself a plate of food. But hey, look up shopcitadjules.com, man. Pick up one of our badass 69 South t-shirts. A portion of the proceeds goes to victims, and it helps support our show. Help keep the lights on here in the studio. We thank you all so much for listening. Everybody, just take it easy and enjoy life. That's what it's all about. Lieutenant Heron put Watson in contact with retired ICE SP Detective Rice, who was the lead on the case in 1992. The ISP Putnam Post case number was 53-09414. Detective Rice recalled the body being tied up and covered in a black substance. Lieutenant Watson knows from Anderson's interview that the black substance was paint used in the intent of concealing the body.
On September 9, 2019, ISP crime scene investigator and Lieutenant Watson went to the home in Atlanta of Bledsoe's mother. They took a consensual buccal swab from her and submitted it for DNA to be compared to the DNA from the John Doe collected during the autopsy of the body found at the illegal dump site from ISP case number 53-09414.
On September 30th, 2019, Lieutenant Watson received an email from the ISP laboratory stating the certificate of analysis was complete. The certificate of analysis stated that the probability of maternity is 99.9968%. So it was Bledsoe 100%.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, how bittersweet is this? Your son's been missing for almost 20 years. About.
Right.
And just disappeared. I can't imagine one of my brother or my kids or anybody ever just disappearing and not knowing what ever happened to him. I couldn't even imagine it.
I wonder if there was any speculation on it, like if Tony Bledsoe's mother or wife ever wondered, you know what I mean? Hey, I wonder, because I think it was only 12 days after the disappearance of Tony Bledsoe,
they found his body.
Right. I just wonder in the back of my head if the mother and the wife or any family members.
You know what? Maybe not, because it was so far away from Arcadia where they were living.
True.
Even though it was still in the state of Indiana. I mean,
news didn't travel as fast as it does now, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. An investigative grand jury was conducted in the fall of 2024. The sister of Anderson testified that her brother told her that he and Andy killed Tony Bledsoe. She said that he and Andy had been stealing cars and stereos and things like that back and forth between Wisconsin, and she thought they would steal stuff from here and sell it in Wisconsin and vice versa. Tony found out about it and wanted to be involved with them, and they didn't want him to be. She said Andy had Tommy coax Tony to the house, and once they got him in the garage and shut the garage door, she believes he said he shot him. Tommy said that he coaxed Tony into the garage to show him stuff and that Andy stepped out and shot him. She said they took Tony into the bathtub, started sawing off his feet and hands and head. She also stated that at one point Anderson got mad at her brother-in-law and he said, "Do you want to go meet Tony?"
Wow. So not only was he bragging on that story, he would use that story to threaten people.
And intimidate people.
Yeah, you want to go meet Tony? Remember I told you about Tony. That's what he was doing.
That's exactly what he was doing.
See, the story gets a little bit messed up right there as well, because the sister, I know it's he said, she said shit, but the sister's saying that Tommy or her brother said that they coaxed him into the garage to look at parts or something, and that's when dude shot him.
Yeah, Tommy definitely knew.
Absolutely.
That there was a plan set up.
And then the nephew of Anderson, Scotty Anderson, A. Anderson, that we talked about earlier, testified that his uncle had told him that he had been involved in the murder of a guy named Tony Bledsoe. He stated that Anderson got Tony over to the house, and when Tony walked through the door, Andy shot him. He testified that Anderson and Andy dismembered the body.
Dr. Wagner testified that he had completed the autopsy on John Doe, who was later determined to be Tony Bledsoe through DNA on April 4th, 1992.
Just to be specific, the body was found on April 4th, 1992. That's when he did but he wasn't confirmed to be Bledsoe
until 2020.
Correct.
Okay. Now, Dr. Wagner testified that he had completed the autopsy on John Doe, who was later determined to be Tony Bledsoe through DNA. Now, John Doe, we found stab wounds in the right upper back of the chest near the shoulder blade area up on the right back. These went back to front, in other words, through the back into the back of the chest. These went through the skin, through the chest wall, in the back, nicking the ribs along the way and occasionally hitting the right lung. Then in the right lower back of the chest, there was also 2 more stab wounds that caught his diaphragm and liver. So there was a total of 6 stab wounds.
Somebody was plunging that big-ass knife in his back.
And they were pissed at him. Like, he must have threatened to tell the police, and they were about to get him caught up in something.
Over a stolen stereo system.
A $3,000 stolen stereo system that they didn't have a nickel and dime in, really.
And, I wonder, we didn't see in the probable cause affidavit, but I wondered about this. So Tony Bledsoe was pissed off because he got a stolen stereo system for auto parts, supposedly. But Anderson is the one that went and told Bledsoe about the stolen car stereo. I wonder if the insurance had paid, like if it was identified, like if the stereo was identifiable, if there was serial numbers, because it never said that in none of the incident reports, that if it was serial numbers of the stereo equipment, you know what I mean? He could have been bullshitting the whole time. Bledsoe might have been mad over nothing. Even though it was stolen, he got what he paid for. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and we got to always remember that Tommy seems to be more of the ringleader of the bullshit.
Bullshit, yeah.
Pitting people against this person and that person, or I don't know.
I mean, that stereo system probably never would have even been found. It sounds
not
like
1990.
No, and a state away. I mean, I know Wisconsin's not super far
away
from
northern
Indiana, and stolen stereo reports probably didn't get over state lines like that, I would think, back then. Dr. Wagner also stated, and also I stated previously, the heads, hand, and feet had been removed, and this was post-mortem. And I could tell that they had been done after the heart had stopped beating. The arms and legs had been bound loosely with a nylon-type rope, and then the sixth item that we found, there was something black on the body at the time. We thought it was soot from a fire. The tissue seemed a little bit reddish, so at the time, we thought it could be soot, but we weren't really sure what that was, but that's what we called it at the time.
Dr. Wagner observed that the injuries he observed during the autopsy are consistent with being injuries that could have been created from the knife described by Anderson that was collected from Andy Emmert's home during the search warrant on October 2nd, 2024.
Dr. Wagner looked at the historical data from March and April 1992 and determined that the body located at the dump site could have been dead 18 days, which would match the date of Tony Bledsoe going missing.
It's critical to note that the information regarding the body located without limbs or head was not released to the public. There was also no information regarding the body being tied up and painted black that was released to the public.
Oh, so maybe there wasn't no speculation like I was wondering earlier in the PCA. They didn't release that information. So when that information came out, they knew they had the MFers that did that shit.
Yeah.
The affidavit states that all of the above events occurred in Hamilton County, Indiana, except when specifically noted. The statement is an established probable cause and not all of the facts known to the affiant.
Now, this affidavit concludes with Lieutenant Watson swearing under the penalties of perjury that the foregoing representations are true. And this was on Thursday, May 15th, 2025.
All that led up to the 2024 grand jury, which heard Anderson's sister and nephew both saying that Anderson had owned the hit with Emmert over the car theft grudge. Dr. Scott Wagner's autopsy showed the 6 stab wounds and postmortem cuts, which matches the story that Anderson told. Anderson's court date is July 9th, 2025, but Emmert, still no charges. That's freaking wild. On October 2nd, 2024, state police raided his Atlanta, Indiana home and his place of employment, the Atlanta Town Hall. Back at Emmert's house, they seized 2 Oldsmobile Cutlass vehicles, potentially linked to the 1971 Cutlass owned by Tony Bledsoe, the victim in this case. What if one of the cars were Bledsoe's ride sitting there since 92?
Wow.
Shaving VINs to hide that shit. How fucking bold are you?
Is that shaving VINs? What's that?
Just taking the VINs off it. I mean, you could...
What, does like every car have just like one number stamped on it?
No, they usually have one up in the windshield where you literally have to take the windshield out to change them. Then they have a panel usually on the outside of the door frames, or where the door closes.
So they got the same number in a bunch of spots all over.
Absolutely, in different vehicles.
Do they put them on like the parts of the car too?
Sometimes they're on motor blocks that coincide with the VIN numbers. Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
I know that because if you buy old muscle cars, road trucks and shit, people always talk about, hey, the numbers match. You know what I mean? It makes the older vehicles worth more money if it's the original motor that matches the VIN.
Oh, okay. But gosh, that's all nuts. And that knife, that Boy Scout knife with the rusty blade and the leather grip that Anderson described, and then the cops are finding one like it in Emmert's safe during that raid, that's chilling evidence, but no cuffs yet. The surveillance video at the Atlanta Town Hall showed troopers handing him documents, and then they just rolled out. I mean, he's walking free. Do you think there's enough probable cause to arrest him?
I don't know. You wonder that. It's the words of one man. Basically, all the witnesses in this quote unquote, word witnesses in this shit was all related to Anderson's mouth. So it was all what he said, basically she said. But then Anderson in his interview, pointed at the dude to be his accomplice. So I've seen people arrested on less for murder accomplice or murder.
What if this guy didn't have nothing to do with it at all, and dude has just had a grudge and hated him for a year and is just being a trifling ass POS.
I don't know. I'm not buying that either, but I guess we'll see. The town council put Emmert, Atlanta's utility superintendent and building commissioner, on paid leave in October 2024, and he was back in about a month running water, sewer, and building codes for the 750 residents. But the May 27th, 2025 meeting was like a war zone. Nick Lynch roared, "Fire him. This is trashing our reputation." Angie Van Hook freaked out about her water safety and her kids. Ilya Teal pushed, "He's not charged, give him a break." A legal snag bumped it to a closed session on May 31st, 2025.
So here's the kicker we unearthed. Back on May 24th of 2024, before the murder heat, Emmert sued Sandra K. Alvarez and Kevin Stoops. Now, this is case number 29D07-2405-CT-005-819. Alvarez posted on like a Facebook forum that he dodged a gas leak call drunk driving the town truck. Stoops backed her and she wild out, saying that he planted drugs to frame her and her husband, even calling him a Ku Klux Klan leader. And now he's suing for defamation and cash.
Holy shit. So all this shit was going on before the murder heat came on?
Yes.
So Exhibit A, that May 21st, 2024 thread, got Kay joking about Emmert showing up with Stoops and Alvarez clowning on the booze and the truck. Tracy Goff was like, "That's sad." Emmert's lawyer, Matthew Cook, calls it lies. Filed before the raid, so it's old beef, not a murder cover-up. But with those cars, that knife, and Anderson's tail, is the law sleeping or on probable cause?
Now, Emmert's the pulse of the Atlanta grid, the water grid, the sewer grid, the building codes. There's no charges yet, but that safe, those cars, it's a head scratcher. With Anderson's day in court on July 9th and the council meeting that was actually last night, is he a targeted man or a killer walking free? The tension in Atlanta is thick enough to cut with a rusty Boy Scout knife.
Oh, shit. Let's break this down. We've laid out a lot of information. The big question looming over Atlanta right now is there enough probable cause to charge Andy Emmert in all this?
It's a huge question, especially with Anderson's court date coming up. Let's look at the current evidence against Emmert. We've got Thomas L. Anderson's Jr. repeated interviews starting way back in September of 2019, where he directly points the finger at Emmert. He alleges Emmert shot Bledsoe with the shotgun and then stabbed him 6 times with the Boy Scout knife, with Anderson saying he hit him with a bat.
I mean, you're going to go through all that. Why even say anything about the baseball bat? That's what confuses me. I mean,
I know, right?
Why even put yourself in any physical contact with Mr. Bledsoe? I mean, why do that? We're going to find out a bunch more, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's not just Anderson, though. His nephew Scotty and his sister, they both back up his story, linking the whole motive to that 1990 Pontiac Firebird theft dispute. Plus, Wagner's autopsy report showing the stab wounds and dismemberment perfectly line up with his account. That's a pretty tight narrative, man.
Absolutely.
I've seen people arrested for less. Like I said, the dude literally said, "I was there when he killed this man." They found the man. He released information that was not known to the public. I don't see why the Emmert dude's not in jail yet.
Well, yeah, there's the physical evidence from October 2nd, 2024 raid. They found a knife matching Anderson's description: rusty, fixed blade, leather handle, and Emmert's safe. We don't know if it's directly linked to those stab wounds. And let's not forget the 2 Oldsmobile Cutlasses seized. One could very well have been Bledsoe's 1971 model. That opens up a whole nother can of worms about VIN tampering and an auto theft ring. But we're just speculating.
And all those contextual clues add layers, too. Emmert's long friendship with Anderson, I mean, they shared the duplex, the Firebird theft. It all paints a picture of a shared criminal past, with Bledsoe's threats being a catalyst. And the details about the black spray paint on the torso and the concrete bucket disposal, it all just fits to me. A lot of it does, but you never know. It could be some bullshit.
So from a legal standpoint in Indiana, probable cause needs a reasonable belief based on facts that a crime was committed and that the suspect is reasonable. It's less than beyond a reasonable doubt, but way more than just a hunch. It requires specific, articulatable evidence. The details in Anderson's affidavit were enough to get him arrested on May 20th, 2025, but still no charges for Emmert. That suggests prosecutors are looking for more to directly connect him to the case. But there are weaknesses too. Anderson's credibility as a co-conspirator could be questioned. He's likely looking at a plea deal, which could bias his testimony. And we haven't heard anything about forensic links like blood or DNA from the knife or the cars being publicized. Emmert hasn't made any direct statements that we know of either. And let's not forget the 33-year gap in all of this. Memories fade, precision suffers.
I agree with that, but Anderson sure did remember the two $10 bills in Bledsoe's wallet. I found that pretty odd, too.
Yes.
From a critical perspective, the whole narrative relies heavily on Anderson's word. Is he deflecting to lessen his own sentence? Prosecutors might be holding back, waiting for more corroborating evidence. Maybe they're testing the knife. Maybe they're getting definitive answers on the cars or waiting for a grand jury input. The fact is he hasn't been charged despite the raid, and that Hall suggests real caution on the prosecutor's part. Maybe political pressure in Atlanta, or they simply don't have enough independent proof to ensure a conviction yet.
That's some seriously strong circumstantial evidence against Emmert and Anderson's testimony, all pointing towards probable cause. But without that forensic confirmation or confession, prosecutors might see it as not enough for a winning case, especially given how high profile this has gotten.
So that was basically the gist of every bit of information that we knew until we woke up this morning and we got this breaking news story from Fox 59.
Play it off, fuck it.
New tonight, the small central Indiana town of Atlanta fired an official today after he was implicated in a decades-long cold case. But as we found out today, the town's decision was not a unanimous one.
Our Father God, we are thankful for another day. We're thankful for our town, our community, and all who live here. And Father, this meeting's very important for our town. It can unite us or divide us.
Saturday, the Atlanta Town Council voted to terminate Utility Superintendent Andy Emmert after Emmert was implicated in the 1992 killing of Tony Bledsoe.
In my opinion, that's enough for the town to say, listen, you can't. You gotta go.
Although the council unanimously placed Emmert on administrative leave last October, Emmert has not been arrested or charged in connection with Bledsoe's killing.
You're innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, and that's the way I feel.
Bledsoe's eldest son told our Charles Benberry Saturday he's asking anyone with more information about his father's killing to come forward.
I want to know why. What's the point? It's disgusting.
The council did not allow for public comment Saturday. Minutes into the meeting, law enforcement asking one man to leave.
I hope all you people, I hope we get justice for this.
Council President Murray Dixon was the only member who voted not to terminate Emmert.
I'm not judge. I'm not a jury. I'm not a prosecutor.
He's town president, so, he can vote however he wants to, But we had enough.
The council president has made clear the town is in no way involved in a legal process having to do with Bledsoe's death.
Man, that's some wild shit. It's got the little town of the ATL of IND in an outrage, man.
It sure does.
I feel bad for Bledsoe's boy. He looks just like Tony Bledsoe.
He looks
exactly if you guys didn't
like him.
See the news report on that.
And, all we got right now is really stuff from Anderson, words from Anderson and Anderson's family. And when we read these probable cause affidavits, you got to remember a lot of times that these are statements put in these by officers and their allegations. And we've even come across probable cause affidavits that when we've read them and then we've seen more depositions of the officer that it wasn't correct.
We've definitely seen officers and detectives in some certain cases and counties lie on probable cause affidavits, sometimes just to cover, like, try to get old beefs took care of. But that's another story for another day.
That'll be a good story.
Sure will. Stay tuned to 69 South. We are hot on this stories trail, and we'll definitely keep you updated. Our Patreon bonus episode drops on Monday, including this Monday.
Yeah. So if you want more of 69 South and you want to check out our episodes and support the show, head on over to patreon.com/69 South and join us over there as well. We even have a free membership tier.
We couldn't do it without our Patreon members.
And I also want to send a big shout out and thank you to one of our amazing followers. Her name is Emerald, and she sent us a nice card this week, and it was really amazing. And she is a survivor of some really horrible acts, and maybe one day we'll get to tell her story, but she's an amazing woman.
We appreciate you. Stay tuned, everybody. Until then, have a good day, good evening, what?